Thank you everyone for joining this very important presentation. We're excited to share the findings. This was a collaborative effort, and so I appreciate that we're also making it available in multiple languages as a department. As was mentioned, I should start again with a just quick introduction of who I am. I have the honor of serving as the general manager of the city's Community Investment for Families department. Our department was established in July of 2021, and our focus is to break the cycle of poverty by creating opportunities for Angelenos to thrive. And we launched this unit, the Childcare Policy and Equity Team, in January of 2023, because we know that we need to create more opportunities for families to access childcare. We know how critical this is for a family's economic stability. And I do want to thank Rachel Bokarsley, who is spearheading today's presentation, but of course our Assistant General Manager is also on the call, Veronica McDonald, and Hisu Kim, who is also part of the Childcare Policy and Equity team. Our team does work in partnership very closely with the mayor's office, other city departments, county departments, and a wide range of childcare organizations to strengthen the childcare infrastructure and increase family access to quality childcare options. And we are thrilled this morning to be joined by our Deputy Mayor, Brenda Shockley, who serves also as the Chief Equity Officer for Mayor Bass and leads the mayor's economic opportunity agenda. Brenda has been a lifelong advocate for children and families. Deputy Mayor Shockley, we're so thrilled to have you join us today. And recently, in collaboration with Deputy Mayor Shockley's office, we were awarded a grant from the National League of Cities to do more research and develop a long-term plan in our city to increase childcare options for families across Los Angeles. So we're so grateful to have our Deputy Mayor join us, and I'm going to turn it over to her to offer a few opening remarks as well.
Thank you, Abigail. Is it on? Yeah. I'm really honored to be here as well, because the work that is being done by the Community Investment for Families Department really is sort of the overarching department that has as its sister departments the Department of Aging, the Department of Disability, the Economic and Workforce Development Department, the LA Civil Rights Department, Youth Development Department. And we are now a team of departments because we recognize the importance of providing comprehensive human services to those in our community that have the greatest need, and that you don't, it's not one size fits all, and it also cannot be done in a silo. That just as we among our own families are integrated with all the things that we need and the support systems that we need, so is the case for all of those who are participants in the various departments that I described. And one of the things I'm particularly excited about is the relationship. One of the things we've been working with is through the early childhood education to also have it be intergenerational. And so we actually have programs where we have those who are currently operating or having experiences in the child care development field, mentoring those who are coming new, and then they in turn being able to serve the families and youth. It's sort of referred to as 3Gen. And I think that that's something that captures beyond the childcare issues, beyond it. That's where all of these departments come together, because every generation, one way or the other, is impacted by the departments. I'm anxious to hear this report, so I'm not going to take a lot of time, but I do want to say the mayor's office is proud of the work we've done to support the youngest residents and their families through childcare initiatives. As Abigail described, we have made a commitment, and we recognize that that's critical to even having a meaningful and effective community investment and families department. In 2020, the mayor's office started early childhood education team, and that was to help close the school readiness gap, something that really put us in good stead when we had to pivot during the pandemic and find ways to make sure that we address the gap and we also address the issues around families' needs and youth employment. So from that, we had something called student to student. And that was where the younger siblings could be compensated for tutoring, working with the older siblings with the younger siblings and or anyone else in the household. So we really, had we not already made that commitment to recognizing the importance of closing the gap and providing childcare, we would not have been as prepared when we came to having to face the pandemic. We also in 2021 launched the Early Childhood Education Student Advancement Program to build the early education pipeline. Christina Hernandez is on this team and working with CIFD, but also working with early childhood partners throughout the county as well as nationally, and was very critical in obtaining the award from the U.S. Conference of Mayors that Abigail described. The earliest childhood, and this is just a quick background to get us all sort of headed in the right direction, that the city of LA has actually been active in the early childhood landscape for decades. The city has operated child care programs through our Recreation and Parks Department for almost 40 years. In 1987, they authored the first child care policy as the city of Los Angeles was one of the first cities in the nation to hire a child care coordinator. The city pioneered the opening of a child care center to provide, and I think some of you know Joy Picus, to provide child care to city employees. We continue to do the work. In 2021, $20 million was dedicated to reopen many of the recreation and parks and CIFD child care centers that were shuttered during the 2008 recession. And in 2023, we created a child care policy and equity team within the Community Investment for Families Department to strengthen the infrastructure and expand child care access for families. In 2023, we authored a new citywide child care policy. Child care is essential to enhancing the mayor's goal and vision for a prosperous city of Los Angeles for everyone. Addressing child care barriers for families is essential to reducing the risk of homelessness for vulnerable families. This work on child care is key to breaking the cycle of poverty and housing instability for Angelenos. It is critical today that we continue to lock arms to face the issues and challenges that face our city, especially for our most underserved communities, families, and children. On behalf of Mayor Bass, thank you again for your support and your partnership and your commitment to the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Sorry, I'm going to turn it over to you. Just wanted to say thank you again to our Deputy Mayor for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Bocarsley, and I lead the Child Care Policy and Equity work within the Community Investment for Families Department. And we are here today to talk about the Caring Cities program that we did in partnership with CHANGE, where we learned from child care providers in Los Angeles. So we'll start today by talking a little bit about the Caring Cities program and what that is. We will provide an overview of the child care landscape in Los Angeles, which is going to give us some really great context for our research findings. We're going to close out today by speaking a little bit about how our team has used those findings to shape and to guide our work. And so the Caring Cities is an initiative of CHANGE, which is the City Hub and Network for Gender Equity, which was founded in 2020 in Los Angeles in the mayor's office. And they have gathered a network of global cities around a common and shared goal. And one of the goals for the Caring Cities work was to look at caregiving across 3 cities, in Bogota, in Buenos Aires, and in Los Angeles, and to invite caregivers to really shape local services and policies. In Los Angeles, we focused on childcare providers. And so we partnered with 4 resource and referral agencies, 4 of the 5 that serve the city of Los Angeles, to identify 34 childcare providers who we spoke to largely in facilitated focus groups, but we did have a few one-on-one interviews. And we spoke to providers that worked in childcare centers. We spoke to those that worked in family childcare homes, as well as license-exempt family, friend, and neighbors providers. And we will speak a little bit more around what those types of opportunities are. But the majority of those we spoke with were family childcare home providers. We also wanted to note that the majority of the providers that we spoke with served lower income children. These are children that are eligible for financial assistance from the state for subsidies. And more than 3/4 of those that we spoke with had a majority of their students receiving this financial assistance. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening in Los Angeles. At the end of the day, the bottom line is that there are not enough childcare options for children in Los Angeles. We have over 200,000 children in our city ages 0 to 5 and only about 50,000 seats. And this discrepancy is even more stark when you look at the opportunities for infants and toddlers. We as a city only have about enough licensed childcare seats for about 4% of the infant and toddler population. In addition, the cost of childcare is extremely high. It can be higher. It's often the highest household expense beyond that of housing. About 45% of our children in our city are eligible for subsidized care, but only about 30% of those that are eligible are actually enrolled in some type of assistance program. I want to walk through these 3 settings that I briefly mentioned before. So a couple of ways to organize them. The first is a licensed care. So these first 2, the child care center and the family child care home, are licensed care. They're programs that are licensed by the state of California. Child care centers are typically in commercial spaces and they're a bit larger. And they typically have multiple rooms that are age specific. So there's a room for the 2s and a room for the 3s. Family child care homes are also licensed programs, but they happen within the residence of the provider, of the owner as well. And they're typically a mixed age group and a bit smaller because of their setting. We also have this license-exempt family, friends, and neighbor care, which they do not require a license, and it's kind of what it sounds like. It's a family member, or it's a friend, or it's a neighbor who's providing care to children of a family. And they're only typically caring for 1 family, maybe 2 families worth of children. And the other way to sort of organize this is around settings. So the family child care home and the family, friend, and neighbor care are typically referred to as home-based care because they occur in that residential setting. And we know that the majority of children who are receiving financial assistance from the state are in these home-based settings. So before we hear from providers themselves, I want to share a little bit about who these providers are. Now, the information you're seeing here is California-specific data, but we saw that there is really strong alignment between the data we see at the state level and those we see in LA City. And so we spoke with majority women of color. Everyone we spoke with was a woman, and many of whom are born outside of the US, and more than half speak a language other than English. Additionally, more than 50% have an associate's degree or higher, and many of them have spent decades in the early childhood field, the median tenure here being 17 years. Unfortunately, childcare providers are not compensated appropriately or sufficiently. The average annual salary for a childcare provider in LA County is $36,000, and fewer than half receive benefits like health insurance and paid time off. And so now we want to share with you a little bit about what we learned from these conversations with providers, and we're going to share them through quotes, through the direct words of those we spoke with, because it is core to the Caring Cities program that we elevate the voices of childcare providers in these policy conversations. So our first finding was that childcare providers are deeply devoted to the children and families they serve, and they desire greater visibility and respect for their work. A lot of providers shared with us that they are not feeling appreciated given the amount of emotional and physical and cognitive work that it takes to provide care for children for so many hours a day. One provider shared, "A lot of us providers are not appreciated. They look at us as babysitters, and I tell them, no, I'm a professional. I've gotten my degree. We have children for 10 or 12 hours a day. If we don't put our time into educating and teaching life skills, then who's going to do it?" The second finding that we learned about was that the need for increased pay, and providers share this as their number one challenge facing their business. We learned earlier that the income that providers take is so small to begin with, but really what they were expressing is not the concern around their own salary. They were expressing that such small margins really lead to challenges in quality programs. One provider in West Los Angeles said, "My biggest challenge is retaining my employees because we do not make enough money to be providing all of the benefits people deserve. And my employees, they deserve everything because they're really good at what they do. But obviously, sometimes we cannot compete with McDonald's or with In-N-Out. They have better pay and better benefits than whatever we can offer." And we've heard this across the board, this challenge in retaining the childcare staff who are leaving the field and in recruiting them because it's not seen as a sustainable industry to join. The third finding that we have was that providers feel like they're navigating business operations alone. They're excited by opportunities for training, for guidance, for mentorship. They're excited to keep learning, but they've done a lot of their operations sort of by trial and error and by connecting with peers. And they're really looking forward and eager to have a little bit more of that business knowledge. One provider in South Los Angeles said, "Being a family childcare provider, we're not taught the business aspects of childcare, like how to deal with taxes and all that good stuff. I'm in a workshop right now, and even though I've been doing childcare for 25 years, all the information is brand new." And I think we hear this across the board, and it's really impressive that after so many years in the field, these childcare providers are still so interested in learning more how to make their programs work better for themselves, for their staff, and for their families. The fourth finding was that providers want to grow their businesses so they can serve more families. And they have they come up to a lot of barriers in trying to navigate the complex process for both starting and expanding their child care programs. And they're really interested in efforts to clarify and streamline those processes. One provider in West Los Angeles said, "After working in childcare for 15 years and running a family childcare center for 4 years, I was so ready to open my childcare center last year. Because I was not aware of the process, it took way longer than expected. I called around before starting to get information on how to open a center, but no one told me. Be aware of the zone and the occupancy. You might need these permits. You might need a fire alarm system that's over $25,000. I was not made aware of all that, and then you're stuck in a rental contract still waiting for your permits." And then our last finding, and that which I really want to elevate, is that providers, of course, have lasting impacts on the children they serve, and they have a lasting impact on their communities. One provider shared that I have been able to help former employees become daycare providers themselves. I train and teach them, and I hire former students back. One working for me now will be 21 years old soon, and she started when she was 2 years old. So we're seeing here not just the important role they're playing in the critical development of children's brains from the ages of 0 to 5, but they're also creating employment opportunities in their communities, and they're helping to grow small businesses in their communities. So their reach and their extension really is large and broad, and they're having these huge impacts on the communities they're serving. And so, as General Manager Marquez mentioned before, the Child Care Policy and Equity Team was established in January of 2023 with the intention of looking at the procedures and the policies across the city to find ways to reduce barriers for child care providers and to increase opportunities for families during this really critical moment of a child's development. And so the learning that we got from these providers fed into the development of our strategic plan, which was submitted and unanimously approved by City Council as the city's child care policy earlier this year. And as we implement this work, we are continuing to have conversations with child care providers because we know that situations change, we know that needs change, and we want to make sure that the work that we're doing is actually having the impact we intend. And so we have a second set of focus groups and interviews coming up in this fall where we're going to gut check the work that we've done with them and continue to get their feedback as we implement the plan. We also, of course, heard strongly about the need for increased compensation and benefits, and we are being strong advocates on their behalf. We facilitated a city council resolution that raised awareness and encouraged the state to keep their commitment to fund a new reimbursement rate that reflects the true cost of care. The reimbursement rate is the subsidy amount that a provider receives when they care for a child receiving financial assistance from the state. And right now that amount is far too low. And it's really impacting the ability of providers to give quality care to these children. And so the state has committed to increasing that rate, and this resolution elevates that even further and supports and encourages them to maintain that commitment. We were also appointed to the Joint Committee on Legislation, which is a county-wide group that provides policy recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. And in our pursuit of position this year, we also elevated the need to move forward that reimbursement rate process. Lastly, we participate in multiple workforce development groups, both at the county level and at our city level. What Deputy Mayor Shockley referenced before, the grant through her office, part of the focus of that group is to really bring creative minds together to think about the ways the city can supplement the supports for providers and increase them, both in terms of coordination, in terms of communication, and then in material changes. The second focus of that group is around facilities, another area we heard from providers. Our team has developed a facilities work group that brings together 7 different departments in the city, as well as the Community Care Licensing Division at CDSS. And we come together to look at facilities challenges and policies and resources in the city. The first thing that we've done is developed a provider toolkit, which documents the process for opening and expanding programs. And this is really something that we took from our conversation. We had this idea to do a toolkit on opening a program beforehand, which they validated the need for, but we had not thought about the expansion process and what that looked like for providers. And so we've developed our toolkit to have a whole section on expansion, specifically because that's what we heard from providers. And we're in the process of securing funding to offset those facility costs. Additionally, we are looking at the forms and the documents that are needed in that process and making sure they're accessible. We know that many child care providers do not speak English as a first language, so we want to review those documents to make sure they're very clear and to make sure that they are in languages that can be understood. And then lastly, we are looking at the policies and procedures of of the process and the complexity of it to see if there are redundancies we can eliminate, to see if there are ways to streamline the process. And then lastly, I just want to note that in addition to sort of meeting together and doing this material work, we've created this network across the city so that when childcare providers come to us or when the organizations who support them come to us, we have people we can call in all the different departments, get that information very quickly back directly to providers or to those who support them. And then lastly, we heard that providers are interested in business development opportunities, and we know that there's kind of two things going on there. One, we're not communicating well enough around the business opportunities that exist, and two, that there are probably some gaps in those opportunities. So to address the communication, we've developed a website specifically for families and providers. So we have a whole side of the website for families, and then a side that provides resources to providers, and we're in the process of expanding that significantly with a page that's dedicated to business development opportunities and to one for starting or expanding your business. Additionally, we're working at the city level and with our county partners to map out what exists, what business development opportunities already exist, so that we can think about what are the gaps and what the city can do to fill them. So I am going to pause here. You will receive these slides after. Our contact information is listed on this final slide, as well as a link to the full Caring Cities report on Change's website, which I encourage you to visit.